Hey YouTubers. Requested by Earl. Now I'm going to start this one over. Hello YouTube, this is Bill here, aka Moogyboy6, my pal. Yeah. And this video is going to be my submission for the bass guitar tag. Got a request from my buddy Earl from the Maxproud channel to talk a little bit about my perspective on the bass in the form of 10 questions for me to answer. And so this is going to be my little attempt to give my little perspective on playing the bass. And this is my bass, of course, you've seen it in other videos. I don't have it plugged in or anything, but I just want to have it handy in case I want to demonstrate something. Question number 1, why the bass? Well, I didn't start out as on the bass. I didn't set out to be a bass player. My first instrument was the guitar, of course, and I picked up the bass. My first bass was it was a hollow body violin shaped Kent bass, a cheap hollow body bass guitar from probably the 60s or 70s, and I goofed around on that a little bit, but never very seriously. Later on, when I started recording, when I got my first cassette Porta Studio, I decided that I needed to have a bass because songs sound pretty boring without one. So it started out for me being what I like to call a functional instrument. It's just something that I kind of know how to play and something to fill out, demos and recordings where I'm just goofing around. So it started out like that. It got more serious a couple of years later when I joined my first band. It was a jam band. It ended up being a 5-piece, and then a 4-piece after one of the guys left. But they had 2 guitarists in the band, and they were actually probably better than I was. But they needed a bass player. So I picked up the bass on rehearsal. I didn't really have a lot of experience really playing with other people, and I got a lot better very quickly. And ever since then, I've really kind of appreciated the bass as it's an instrument in its own right, and I got pretty good at it. I still really enjoy playing it. Sometimes I enjoy playing the bass better than I do the guitar, just because it's a different thing, and there's so much cool stuff that you can do on the bass. So that's why I picked up the bass. It's been kind of a challenge for me, but I like challenges. And so yeah, it started out kind of as, well, I gotta have one. And it turned into something more than that. So that's where I'm at right now. Question number 2, did you start out on the guitar before the bass? I think I already answered that. Yes, I did start out on the bass. I played guitar for a long time before I attempted playing the bass, and I think it's really helped with that. I think it really helps with single note solo playing. I didn't start out with the bass, obviously, like I said before, and playing the guitar kind of made it easier to do melodic stuff and move around on the neck a lot. So yeah, and I think playing the guitar first did help. Having bass come second. Question number 3, my main bass right now is this guy right here, which I've demonstrated plenty of times on other videos here. But very quick recap, this thing. It's a P bass, precision style bass that I stuck together out of parts of my first reel, and basically replaced the body and did some little customization things, which I've detailed elsewhere. As you can see, the original bass was a PV, also precision style, and it served me well for a long time. It'd be nice to get another one sometime. I think I'd like to get a more modern type bass sometime, or even like a jazz style, something that's got a little more punch to it, and maybe better for trying to play slap or more melodic stuff. This is a very nice one for rhythmic playing and old school soul / funk type playing, which is really kind of my thing. Which leads, okay, next question. Do I prefer a 4 or 5 string bass? Well, I've tried playing a 5 string one time. In my first band, our guitarist had a 5 string bass at his disposal. He let me borrow it for a while, and it always confused the hell out of me. Having that low, what is it, B string, the low string on there. I always, whenever I wanted to play an E, I always it just instinctively went for that first string, and it always ended up sounding weird and on the wrong notes and everything, and that wasn't cool. And besides, it was so wide, and the strings were so thick. Maybe that was part of the problem. But it was they were heavy gauge. The strings were kind of heavy for me, and I wore my hand out trying to play it. I just couldn't get my hands around it. My hands. Some people tell me I've got big hands. I don't think I do. But it was just very hard to get my hands around that neck and press down on those big, thick tree stump strings. So I tried that, and keep in mind, this was while I was playing bass in a band. So it wasn't like I didn't know how to play the bass, but it was just having that big, thick neck and those big, thick strings and that bottom E that was just confusing me all over the place. So I didn't pursue it, and I don't particularly. I'm kind of a traditionalist anyway. It's like in my mind, basses are supposed to have 4 strings, and so maybe I'm just not adventurous enough. But 4 is plenty for me. And I also don't really see the point of having something super, super low like that, to a point where you can't even really hear what note it is. That's just my prejudice in it. But anyway, next question. Who was my first bass mentor? My first bass mentor, the first bass guitar player that I really kind of looked up at, that I can think of, was probably James Jamerson, the session bass player that I was made to love her. Apparently, Carol Kay says that she played the bass on that. I always thought it was James Jamerson. Maybe she did play it. Either way, I also later got to appreciate Carol Kay, George Porter Jr., The Meters, Paul McCartney on his old Beatles songs, especially the later stuff after he switched to a Rickenbacker bass. Amazing stuff. Great bass player. He should definitely be up there among the top 10 bass players ever. And I've paid more attention to bass lines since those days. I pay more attention. My preference is for old school bass players. The more modern slap players, I never really got into. I appreciate good slap playing, but it's not really my preference. I really like the sort of kind of blues based, jazz based, funky bass playing of the old masters, as it were. But I'd say probably the first bass player that I really paid attention to was probably, what style of music do I love playing to? Oh, I'm sorry, that's number 7. Number 6, what finger style do you use for playing? These days, and really after I started playing bass in the band, in my first band, I really went heavily towards playing fingerstyle. I started out playing with a pick because that was what I was used to. But now, once I got used to playing with my fingers, it's really what I prefer to. It's hard for me to play with a pick anymore. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't quite feel right. I just like the flexibility of playing with my fingers. I feel like I have more of a connection with the strings. And I even went through a thing where I was consciously doing the Jamerson single finger thing, and it's actually not a bad way to go. I found that I actually can play pretty fast just with one finger, you know. I'm not putting any effort into getting it accurate there, but anyway, and on top of that, what I will do sometimes with a pick is try the old string mute trick, putting something under the bridge down here. I like to use an old sock. It works pretty well. A lot of people, you use paper towels or whatever. I like to stuff a sock under the strings near the bridge, and that actually works pretty well too. And then go at it with a pick, or palm mute it, I know it's not plugged in. Hopefully you can hear it. But slap really gives me a hard time. I still cannot play slap very well, and I don't know if I ever will. Maybe if I had a better or different bass, maybe I'll try. But I've always had pretty poor luck with attempting slap. It's just not my thing. So. Well, okay, so 7, what style of music do you love playing bass to? I've always been more or less a rock guy at heart. Old rock, classic rock, 60s, 70s. So that's still where I mostly go to. I've done a little bit of, I've done some stuff playing, some more funky type stuff. That first band where I was playing bass all the time was a jam band, so it was influenced a lot by Fish, the Grateful Dead. We played a song I think by Sublime, did some other cover stuff, but it was that sort of thing, and I always tended to kind of play in a sort of a funky mode, more, yeah, but generally, I've played rock. I've done some playing around with jazz, but I don't think I'm quite advanced enough to really be a jazz bass player. That's mainly rock. Number 8, do I play upright or synth bass? Oh, I'd love to try an upright sometime. I have played fretless basses, and those are a lot of fun too. But upright bass, haven't done that. I don't have access to one. I don't know where I would find one just to poke around on. But I'd like to. It seems like an interesting thing. As far as synth bass goes, well, I'm also a keyboard player, and I fooled around with playing on the bass end of the keyboard, but that's a whole other story. I've never really had. I used to have a Hammond organ, a little Spinet model that had the 13 key pedal board, and I tried playing with the pedals, and it's kind of difficult. I'm not a pedal player, so yeah, anything like a Moog Taurus or one of those kind of bass pedal synths, I don't know that I'd have much luck with. Although if I tried to practice, I suppose I could. Number 9, do I read notation, play by ear, or use tablature? Most of what I do is by ear. I've always been an ear player, and I'm okay at it. When things get into harmonies and weird things where the bass is playing a different note from what the guitar and the rest of the band are playing, it sometimes confuses me. Also when you're talking about like complex chords or extended chords along with the bass, that can confuse me too. But for the most part, I've always been an ear player. I can read tablature, and I've used it in the past to figure out songs, but I don't go to it very often. And as far as music notation goes, I'm a very, very poor sight reader. I still have trouble. I mean, I know what the basic note names and the things are, but I'm of the type, and this is just with the keyboard. I have to go there and hunt up the thing and look for this is the dot every good boy does, and all that. No, yeah, and then I have to do that, and I can't sight read basically. I have a basic understanding of music notation, but I don't sight read, and I certainly can't do it with the bass or the guitar. You know, I mean that's just with the keyboard. So that's one of the skills I'd like to learn how to do sometime, but I haven't done it yet. So it's on my bucket list. And finally, number 10. Is there an instrument you don't play that you wish you could? Okay, well, I've got I got all the rock instruments down pretty much. Okay, I obviously play the guitar, play the keyboards, play the bass, and I do play the drums. I don't have a drum set now. I used to when I was younger, and I can hold my own on the drums. But outside of that, there are 3 instruments I would like to. Well, no, 4. There are 4 instruments. At least. No. No, scratch that. There are 5 instruments I would like to add to my thing. 2 of them are three string instruments and 2 woodwind instruments. The string instruments are the banjo, the mandolin, and the violin. Really love to try those. The 2 woodwinds would be the flute, the tenor technique. And for a while I was practicing on that, and it was all right. I was just having fun playing that thing. I was now turning that into marrying that to learning the chords and all that stuff is something I haven't really done so much yet. But and then the mandolin, well, I'd like to just learn how to play that a little bit and do that as well. The violin, my father plays. I love the flute. I have an old Bundy student flute that I got off of eBay a while back. It needs a little bit of work, but I love the way the flute sounds, and I'd really love to try and incorporate that. And the same thing with the sax. I really love the sax, especially the sound of the tenor sax. Mostly getting that from listening to jazz, and I remember when I was in grade school, there was talk about starting an orchestra at my school, and I got excited about trying to pick up the alto sax back then, partly because back in the early mid-'80s, the alto sax was so popular in pop music. It was like one of the hot instruments back then, and I thought, man, that would be really cool to be able to do that kind of stuff. It never came to fruition, unfortunately. But it would have been nice if it had. So, and I think that about covers all 10 questions. Hopefully, it was enlightening, amusing, and